true, in fact, not only of countries like the United States, but also of India. And the toll that it takes in terms of the extraction of water, the transformation of landscapes, the ways in which these transformations affect people who get displaced is enormous. And this kind of intensive agriculture, while it has yielded from the 1960s onwards very high yields of certain kinds of crops, has also resulted in depleting and degrading soils, in disappearing water. So if you were to, for instance, go to Haratna Bird Sanctuary today, you will find that there are hardly any migrant birds because there is no water. So where's that water going? The water is being used up by farmers to grow water-intensive crops in the area, and it's been at the cost of killing off one of the best wetlands, which attracted birds as far away as from as far away as Siberia. So there is this problem of soil and water loss, losses which can't actually ever be addressed or replaced or in some way taken care of. There are problems of chemical runoff, of pesticide deaths, and we know about the great occupational hazards faced by agricultural workers. But what's often not realized is the huge toll that is taking on all kinds of wildlife. So if you look, for instance, up in the sky in Delhi today, you are unlikely to see a single vulture. But any of you who's been in Delhi from say 15 years ago would remember in the middle of the sky, you always see vultures slowly circling around. And in fact, there was a tree opposite IP College, closer to Lulu Castle, a silk cotton tree, which used to have a whole family of about 40 vultures nesting on it. Now, in all of India, vultures have numbers which used to be in the hundreds of thousands have come down to a few hundreds, and this is extreme. This is a crisis that affects both not just wildlife but also humans, because we don't have vultures, we don't have the scavengers that are taking care of dead carcasses in rural areas. So it's a public health issue as well. But why have vultures been dying? Well, most of them have been found to die because they've been affected by muscular disease because of a chemical called diclofenac, which is used as a painkiller. And this painkiller is given to cattle, to cows and bullocks, but primarily to cows and also in some cases buffaloes. Why are buffaloes and cows being given painkillers? Well, they're being given painkillers because they're given another chemical called oxytocin, which in human beings is given to induce contractions at the time of delivery of babies, but which in cattle also induces contractions, which get cows and buffaloes to yield more milk. So you take your cow and your buffalo, you turn it into a milk-producing machine. You give it chemicals where it produces more milk. Those contractions cause great pain to the cow and buffalo. So then you pump in another chemical, namely diclofenac, in order to ease that pain. And in the process, you end up killing vultures as well. And this is only one kind of crazy logic that seems to work when it comes to agriculture today. If you look, for instance, at agriculture in Europe as well as North America, one of the biggest problems that we face today is mass death of bees. And without bees, there is no pollination. And bees are dying for reasons that we can't fathom, because of chemicals in the environment, because of perhaps radiation from satellite towers, because of cell phones we use. Nobody knows. But the thing is that there's something extremely wrong in the environment that we have created, which is directly hurting one of the most fundamental things that we need in order to keep the cycle of agriculture, food, flowering, the reproduction of plants, the feeding of humans alive, namely the ordinary honeybee. Now, these kinds of changes are in some ways a sign of the great toxicity of modern life, that we are eating ourselves up, we're eating up our environment, and in the process destroying ourselves. This is autophagy. More disturbing things from the point of view of human impacts. If you look, for instance, at the use of bovine growth hormones in milk, you find that already in countries like the United States, little girls have started menstruating now at the age of 7 and 8, as opposed to 12 or 13 as used to be the case earlier. If you look at dead bodies in graveyards, they take longer to decompose because of the build-up of preservatives in the body because of eating processed foods. So both live menstruation, puberty, death, all seem to be caught up in these chemical cycles. The rise of huge numbers of cancers, etc., is also something that is noticeable, and that's a part of both our environment as well as our agriculture. If you look, for instance, at India and you look at chicken farming, chicken being the fastest growing form of meat consumed in India today, you'll find that a poultry farm is actually an industrial operation where chickens are treated through a concentrated regimen of antibiotics, hormones, to make them grow as fast as possible. So we're no longer treating pigs, cows, chicken as animals, we're just treating them as these bundles of chemicals that then come to our table. And of course, with growing affluence, especially in India and China, there has been an increase in consumption of meat. And this means that in agriculture, instead of growing food crops like cereals or pulses, etc., we're growing more and more feed crops. So for instance, a country like Mexico, which primarily used to have a diet of corn-based tortillas and beans, is now growing a lot of jowar and bajra, sorghum and millets. And you might wonder why jowar and bajra, they don't normally eat it. Well, all of those are going, these particular crops, which are actually eaten in India by poor people, are being used as animal feed in the industry to produce smoked pigs and cows, which are then slaughtered for meat. So we also have this paradox now, that we have mountains of food which are produced because of industrialized agriculture. At the same time, we have starvation deaths because industrialized agriculture marginalizes the small farmer and the landless laborer, who cannot participate in it because it is too expensive, the inputs. They can't afford to buy it because they don't have the cash. And in fact, what they face when this kind of agriculture expands is in fact growing displacement, because the kind of water this needs, the kind of energy this needs, means building more dams, more power stations, and in fact removing people from the land as much as possible. So what does this mean in terms, what do these kinds of agricultural practices mean in terms of ahimsa and swadeshi? Because food production today is in fact a form of violence against nature. It's not working with nature, which is what agriculture traditionally has been, but it's working against nature, dominating it for personal gain. It's also the antithesis of the idea of swadeshi or self-sufficiency. Those of us who can afford it now marvel at the fact that we can get Turkish pasta and Malaysian frozen parathas or American-style potato chips in our neighborhood grocery store. The retail chains which have also started. We like the convenience and the consumer choice of getting, say, New Zealand apples through the year, or strawberries and broccoli, or for that matter, getting cauliflowers in summer, whereas cauliflower used to be a winter vegetable in North India, and Karela in winter. Karela being used to be summer vegetables. But think about, so it's good to have all of this choice, we think, but where is this food coming from? Who's growing it and under what conditions? And to use a concept which has become very useful for thinking about these kinds of connections, how many food miles has the food we buy traveled? If you look at Europe, they're getting green beans from Kenya, they're getting cut flowers from Ecuador, they're getting beef from New Zealand or Venezuela. And these kinds of things, of course, have major impacts on the environments and the people which are feeding and providing these kinds of resources and products to rich consumers. So if you look at the Amazon, for instance, large portions of the rainforest were cleared in order to create grasslands where beef cattle could graze. Beef that was then shipped